Welcome to today's edition of the Statler Financial Radio Show. Your financial security is our business. Have a question for the team? Call today, 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188.
Welcome to the Statler Financial Radio Show. I'm your host, Danielle J. Martin. Here with me is founder, president of Statler Financial Services, is Phillip Statler. And today we're diving into the topic that's been dominating the headlines: political tensions and domestic conflicts that could have a ripple effect on the economy, and more importantly, on your financial future. One example making waves right now is the recent tension between President Trump and Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell. So, Phillip, let's dive into it. These kinds of conflicts often leave people wondering how they might impact their investments and retirement plans. So can you help us unpack why this matters to our listeners?
Well, Danielle, the Federal Reserve has kept interest rates higher, and that the reason for that was to help combat inflation. The Powell and the Federal Reserve, they have this target that they want inflation at 2%, and we haven't gotten there. And so they're keeping those numbers higher, the interest rates higher, to help keep inflation down. While at the same time, President Trump has argued for significantly lowering those interest rates to spur economic growth. Now, I got to tell you, there's a sideline to that too, not only to spur economic growth, but to reduce the federal government's interest payment, right? Because as interest rates tick up, our government's debt payment the interest has gone up too. So we've had to pay a higher debt payment. So it's kind of a twofold reason that he really wants to look and have interest rates down. But for you and I, it would be nice to have lower interest rates, but it would also be nice to have inflation under control. So that's one area. So this kind of tension between political leaders and the Fed, it isn't new, but it can create some uncertainty in the markets. And we've seen that this year as a whole, where not only have the tariffs added to the whole uncertainty of the markets, the Federal Reserve and interest rates have as well. And so for retirees that are getting close to retirement, this uncertainty can feel especially unsettling because it could directly impact investments, borrowing costs, even the value of your savings, because those higher interest rates that we've seen lately have transferred into higher CD rates, higher interest rates at savings accounts. So the retirees, they like that. That's a better fixed income for them. But the question is, when are rates going to drop, and how's that going to affect everybody else?
Phillip, you're right. You make a lot of really good valid points here. And so with all of this uncertainty, many retirees, they're probably wondering, how does this affect my retirement? That's the main question. So what should they be thinking about right now?
Well, I think, again, uncertainty in the economy and the markets is exactly why having a solid retirement income plan is so important. You need that plan in place so that you can make sure that you're on track every year and make those little adjustments that may be necessary as we continue to head down that path. And you can't control what happens in Washington or at the Federal Reserve, but you can prepare and you can control how prepared you are for the ups and downs of the market. And so that's a good thing. I've always talked about, there's certain areas of diversification. And the first area of diversification that you need to look at is how much money do you have in the market versus how much money do you have safe and secure. That's really the first diversification you need to do. And so that really talks about that there. And then the last thing is a good income plan really helps ensure you have steady, predictable income to cover your needs, no matter what's happening in the economy. And that's really what it's about, Danielle, is having the income that you need in retirement.
And Phillip, I know as we're talking about this, we're keep hitting the nail on the consistency of talking to your financial advisor. But in retirement, the number one fear is running out of money. So what does a retirement income plan actually look like?
So an income plan really looks at and starts with understanding your income sources. So security, if you have a pension, what are your personal savings? How can we parlay that into a pension for you? Then we create a strategy to turn those savings into income through methods like systematic withdrawals, maybe some annuities booked in there, dividend paying investments or dividend paying portfolio. These are all areas that we can help create income. So the goal is to balance growth and preservation, so your money can last as long as you need it to. And again, that balanced growth and preservation, that's the same thing. That's the first diversification you need to make. Growth versus safety. That's where we need to be. And folks, that's why I developed the core retirement design, to help you create the retirement you always dreamed of. First, we focus on risk, and that's that balanced growth versus preservation. Then we look at taxes. And what does that look like? How can we reduce your taxes as much as possible, not just today, but throughout your whole retirement lifetime? And then lastly, putting together that income plan so that you know where your income is going to come from day in, day out, month in, month out, year over year. You know where your income is going to come from. And that's our core retirement design. Folks, it starts with a 30-minute phone call with you and I, discussing your goals, where you want to be, what you've done so far, and how well you've been able to save for that retirement day. And we'll make sure that you're doing the right things. If not, we'll point out some things that maybe you can change or help you to get on the right path. To get started, like I said, it's a 30-minute phone call. Give us a call, 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188.
There's no cost, there's no obligation to talk with Phillip and the team at Statler Financial Services. Again, in case you didn't get that number, it is 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188. Now, Phillip, let's talk about Social Security for a moment. With all of this economic uncertainty, how can retirees make the most of their Social Security benefits?
Well, Danielle, the key is timing. Timing your Social Security claiming. When are you going to claim that benefit? At 62 versus waiting until 70 can mean a big difference in your monthly check. And so we help clients figure out the right time to claim based on their unique situation, because everybody's different. Some people have a big enough portfolio that they can wait. They can pull off of that portfolio or that IRA for a little while instead of dipping directly into Social Security. And sometimes that doesn't make sense. Sometimes it makes sense to take Social Security early based on your current circumstances. So it's a puzzle that we help you put together. And Social Security is just one piece of that whole big puzzle, though. It's important to integrate it into your overall income plan. And that's why I believe income planning is so important and is much overlooked when it comes to retirement planning. There's a lot of people that have full-blown financial plans, but it doesn't do a good job of focusing on income planning. And that's important when you're heading into retirement. That's where you need to start, is putting together an income plan.
And what about market volatility? Many retirees, they worry about how these ups and the downs could impact their income. So what can they do to help protect themselves?
Well, Danielle, that's where diversification is so critical. Making sure that you don't put all your eggs in one basket. And then when it comes time to pull money out, that you've got options of where's the best place to pull it from. I tell my clients, I just had a conversation actually last week with a client. I said, look, because they're asking, how do we take money out? I said, when you need money, let me know how much you need, what it looks like. And then what I'm going to do is look to see of all your accounts, where's the best place or multiple places to take that money from? What is it going to be most tax efficient? Where's the best place right now because of the economic situation we're in? But all those things come into play. Consider having a mix of growth investments and safer options like bonds and annuities is a big deal. We need to have that diversification between those two pots of money. We also recommend having cash reserves to cover a year or two of expenses, so you're not forced to sell investments during downtimes. I tell most of my clients, look, $25,000 to $50,000 in an emergency fund is what you need to have. If you have more than that, then you probably have too much in the emergency fund. But that 25 to 50,000 is a good number to help people weather the ups and downs of the marketplace, Danielle.
And Phillip, as we're continuing talking about this, for those listening right now, what's the first step that they can do to create a retirement income plan?
Yeah, that's a good question. You have to start where you understand your expenses, what you'll need to cover essentially, like housing, healthcare, and food. Those are the basics we need to make sure we've got covered, as well as what does your discretionary spending look like for travel, for fun and entertainment. Those are important. But you need to have a realistic set of expenses laid out, because that's going to help us know how much income we need to create. So then we're going to work with a professional to map out your income sources and create a strategy to fill the gap, because your gap's going to be created from, you got Social Security, maybe you have a pension, and you're going to take those things minus the expenses. What's the gap? And that's what we need to fill, that gap right there. So the goal is to have a plan that gives you confidence and reassurance no matter what happens in the economy. It's important to have that security of knowing that you're going to be okay. Look, if you're listening and you've saved at least $250,000 or more for retirement, folks, now's the time to take action. The uncertainty that we're seeing in the economy is a reminder that your retirement plan is too important to leave a chance. Here's how we can help. We can help you create a personalized income plan that helps preserve and grow your savings. You'll get a flexible strategy to help you stay steady, even in uncertain markets. And we'll guide you through ways to help maximize Social Security, manage taxes, and preserve your wealth. Folks, don't wait until it's too late. Call us today at 863-877-1180 to schedule your 30-minute, no cost, no obligation phone call, where we'll make sure that you're on the right track to the retirement you always dreamed of. Together, we'll help you build a plan to bring clarity and stability to your retirement. Again, give us a call at 863-877-1188.
There's no cost, there's no obligation. Like Phillip said, there's no time to waste. The headlines may be unpredictable, but your retirement doesn't have to be. So call that number, 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188. Well, the excitement is just getting started. Stay with us. You're listening to the Statler Financial Radio Show. We'll be right back.
Turn your plans of yesterday into yes today. Don't wait another day for a routine checkup of your retirement plans. Call Statler Financial Services, 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815.
Who likes uncertainty? Wall Street certainly doesn't. With fears of a potential recession and partisan politics, there's a lot of uncertainty right now. What will your future look like? Will your taxes go up? Will your savings go down? Here in the Sebring area, financial advisor Phillip Statler and the team at Statler Financial Services have seen uncertainty come and go. Phillip can help you create a plan designed to preserve your finances in uncertain times. And it's not a matter of if those uncertain times will show up, but when. Call 863-877-1188 now to meet with Phillip Statler and the team at Statler Financial Services. Call 863-877-1188 and schedule your visit today. 863-877-1188. Advisory services offered through Second Half Financial Partners, LLC, a SEC-registered investment advisor. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
Time to retire right. This is the Statler Financial Radio Show.
How much is left on your to-do list this week? What about that honey-do list of chores around the house, It's a mile long, right? I already know. The problem with long lists is that they can overwhelm you and cause you to shut down. So let's keep it simple. Welcome back, everyone, to the Statler Financial Radio Show. I'm your host, Danielle J. Martin, alongside Phillip Statler, the founder and president of Statler Financial Services. Phillip, we're going to be talking now about the 3 topics that people should be having on our retirement planning list. That's what we're going to be talking about today. So let's break it down. What are the top 3 topics?
So I think the top 3 topics that I look at when it comes to planning for your retirement is probably number 1 on the list is income. Where's your income going to come from? How are you going to get the income you need to enjoy your retirement for 20, 25, 30 years down the road, right? That's a long time not to be working and get a paycheck. So we need to have a realistic, a written retirement income plan in place so that we've got that track to run on. We know where our income's coming from and we're good with the numbers that are coming in there. The second thing is risk. Too many people, when they retire, don't switch gears. They keep doing what they've always been doing, which they put all their money in a growth portfolio. And there's nothing wrong with growth portfolio, but when you're heading into retirement, what you cannot afford to do is to have another 2008 loss hit your portfolio. I'm talking 30 to 50% decline. That's what you can't afford to have done. And so that's where you need to make sure the amount of risk you have in your portfolio is diversified properly between things that are safe, things that are at risk, and then the risk portfolio, make sure it's allocated properly as well. So risk is the second thing. You want to make sure it lines up with the amount of risk you should have heading into retirement. You got to switch gears. The third thing is taxes. I think people actually forget that there's a tax due when they take money out of their retirement accounts. And that number can be big, depending on how much you're taking out. And so we want to be cognizant of that. We want to make sure that you understand that when you pull money out, Uncle Sam is sitting there with his hands out and he wants his share every time you take money out. So we want to be tax efficient with our portfolios. We want to be tax efficient with our income planning strategies. And we want to be tax efficient with our whole retirement planning process. And so I think these are the 3 main things that need to be on people's retirement planning.
Okay, Phillip, so you mentioned income, risk, and taxes. Now explain, why should these topics be included when we're planning for retirement?
So I think if we look at the number 1 is income, but because let's face it, back in the day, people would have a pension. They would have Social Security, and then they would have whatever they saved. In today's environment, less and less people are going to actually have any kind of pension coming in. I'm going to say probably less than 50% of the folks out there are going to have some kind of pension when they actually retire. And so what that means is it puts a burden on you, the retiree, to put together your own pension plan, making sure that you've got money coming in on a monthly basis. So now we look at Social Security as a big deal, a lot of income coming in. The second thing is we've got to create our own income stream. How do we do that? Well, we do that through our income planning process to make sure that the people have the income they need. We make sure that it's adjusted for inflation to keep up with those type of things, even though that's kind of an unknown out there. But that's the big thing about income planning. I think the other thing is when we look at risk, again, risk needs to line up with where you are in life. And when we get to retirement, it's not the time to be having 100% of your portfolio sitting in the market. And so too many folks head into retirement and they don't switch gears. They don't change the way that they manage their portfolio, look at their portfolio. And that's one of the key aspects of working with somebody, that their primary focus is retirement income planning. It's a different animal. It's a different strategy than when you are working and having to grow your money. So that's a big deal when it comes to risk. And then third is taxes, making sure that, that we're paying the least amount of taxes, not necessarily today, but over your retirement lifetime and over the retirement and the lifetime of your family, to make sure that overall you're paying the least amount of taxes possible. And so we take a look at that, and that's a big part of our core retirement design. And to get started, it's easy, Danielle. All they have to do is give us a call at 863-877-1188 for our core retirement analysis. It's a 30-minute phone call. It's you and I talking about things that are important to you, where you are, where you want to be, and what you're doing yourself to get there and how we might be able to help you get there faster. Again, that number is 863-877-1188 to schedule your core retirement analysis.
There's also that question that many people have is, how do we know if we've saved enough to retire? It's maybe not the top question, but it's on majority of our minds, is knowing, okay, have I saved enough? The number one thing that we hear in retirees is that they are afraid to run out of money. So how do you teach your clients or help your clients know if they've saved enough to retire?
Well, I think it's, people a lot of times to me ask the wrong question, and they'll ask, do I have enough to retire? And that's really the wrong question. We need to look at it a little differently. We need to look at, what am I going to spend in retirement?
Yeah.
And once we know what we're going to have in expenditures, what does that look like? Then we can work backwards and say, okay, yes, we have enough, or unfortunately, no, you don't have enough. And we need to create a strategy, if we haven't retired yet, to increase that amount, or you got to be willing to live off of less income in retirement. And so, and the one thing I would tell people is this: do things in a realistic manner, right? Don't go in and undercut your expenses. I think, well, I won't have that expense, or I won't have that expense. Folks, it never happens that way. Folks end up usually spending more money in retirement than they anticipated. So make sure when you are putting together that budget that you are realistic about the expenses that you're going to incur, the amount you're going to want for travel, the things you're going to want to buy, that motor home or that boat to go fishing or that travel trailer. Those are the things you have to be honest with yourself when you're putting together that budget, because that's the biggest downfall I see, is people are not honest with themselves when they create that budget for retirement, Danielle.
That's right. And it kind of leads you to the question of what are my options for generating income in retirement? So I'm not in this space of worry or fear. And so I'm sure you sit down with your clients and give them options on, this is how you can invest. This is other ways you can generate some income. Can you kind of go through those options so we can just remind our listeners, these are some ways that you can generate income in retirement?
Absolutely. So there are various ways when we create an income planning process. I'm a big believer in a bucket approach. We create buckets of money, where we're going to draw from, how long we're going to draw out of that bucket from that standpoint. Here's what I will tell you is that we look at taking everything and diversifying between a couple of different things. One, we want to diversify between things that are principal protected versus at risk in the market. We need both. And so that's the first strategy, is what does that diversification look like? And so that becomes a big deal. One of the things that you have to look at when it comes to income is looking at annuities. They were created for that one specific purpose, is to help folks create the income they're going to need over their lifetime. And there's been a lot of studies done now that have come out and said, look, if I just add a small chunk to the annuity aspect of income, that I can have a bigger withdrawal rate over my lifetime. That's a huge deal. Mm-hmm. So we need to be open to all those things. Now, obviously, when we look at those things, there are pros and cons to everything. I mean, you can be in the stock market, and the pro is you can have some great gains. The con is that, hey, you could be down 20, 30, 40% before you know it. And so that's a big deal. Annuities, hey, they may be safe and protected from downward losses if you're using index type annuities or fixed type annuities. However, there's some liquidity issues, right? You can't take all your money out at one time. It's you got a strategy there, whether it's a 5-year, 7-year, 10-year aspect, but you got to be willing to hang in there for that period of time. So there's different things that you have to be aware of, the pros and cons of every type of investment vehicle that's out
Really quick, as before we head into break, Phillip, if we can just go into how is retirement income planning different from simply planning to take withdrawals? We just recently talked about it a little bit, but there's a difference in a retirement income plan than taking withdrawals from your retirement savings as needed. Can you go into what's the difference?
You're so right, Danielle, because here's the deal. I call people that take their money out and just withdrawals. It's like opening up the junk drawer at home, right? You got a bunch of stuff.
Right.
You got a bunch of accounts. You may have this brokerage account over here, this annuity over there. Maybe you got an IRA or 401k over here, and you're taking money from something to meet your needs, but you don't have a plan to put it all together.
Right.
And that's where I look at a bucket approach or guardrail approach to what does that look like? Where's my money coming from? Month in and month out, and for how long is it going to last? And that's the question you need to ask yourself. Do I have it written down? Can I look at it and say, this is where my money's coming from for this period of time before I have to switch buckets? Folks, that's a big deal. And again, that's why I created the core retirement design to help people design that retirement they always dreamed of. Folks, give me a call at 863-877-1188. That's 877-1188 to schedule your core retirement analysis.
We like to remind you here on the show, you do not have to plan for retirement alone, so do not hesitate to call Phillip and his team at 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188. Now, if you have a healthy balance in your retirement accounts, that's a great job, but a healthy balance isn't an income plan. We're going to explain that coming up next here on the show. We'll be right back.
Needing a second opinion on your retirement plan or to see if you're paying more than your fair share to Uncle Sam? Schedule your complimentary visit today. Text VISIT to 863-877-1188. That's VISIT to 863-877-1188.
Surprise parties can be fun.
Surprise!
Financial surprises, not so much, especially when you're retired, like finding out you owe more in taxes than you thought you would, or having to go back to work to make ends meet. Maybe you'll be okay, but why not double check just to be sure? Call Phillip Statler at Statler Financial Services and schedule a no-cost retirement double check at 863-877-1188. Phillip and his team have seen their fair share of surprises over the years and know how to help you avoid them. Call 863-877-1188 to schedule your no-cost retirement double check with Phillip Statler at Statler Financial Services. Don't let a financial surprise derail your retirement dreams. Call 863-877-1188 now. That's 863-877-1188. You can also visit StatlerFinancial.com for more info. Advisory services are offered through Second Half Financial Partners, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor.
I want to help you understand some things. Number one, timing of your RMD, because they could potentially push you into a higher tax bracket. Imagine how fast your savings could shrink if you rack up penalties along with taking regular withdrawals and paying taxes.
Time to retire right. This is the Statler Financial Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Statler Financial Radio Show. I'm your host, Danielle J. Martin, alongside Phillip Statler, the president and founder of Statler Financial Services. Now we're talking about just because you have a healthy balance in your retirement savings account, that doesn't mean that you have an income plan. You still have some work to do. So this is why Phillip is here. Phillip, let's get into some of the risks that we need to be aware of to help preserve our income in retirement.
Absolutely, Danielle. So when we look at income in retirement, it's having that plan in place, right? Where is your money going to come in retirement? And so I look at it a little differently than a lot of folks do. I look at a bucket approach. Here's one thing I know is that if you have everything in the market, then if the market declines, you have to be willing to take a pay cut over a period of time. And that's not a good place for a retiree to be. Now, I will say this, you need to have some money in the market. No doubt about it. A lot of folks have more money in the market than they should have. As a matter of fact, I'm going to say that when we look at a risk scale of 1 to 100, a lot of people come in at their portfolios that are much higher risk than they should be in retirement. About 60% of the folks out there have too much risk in their portfolio. There's another 25 or 30% that don't have enough risk. They have it all sitting in CDs or all in money market accounts that they have no risk exposure at all. That's not good either. And there's about 10, 15% of the folks, they've got it right. They've got it exactly where they need to be. And so that's what you have to look at when it comes to income planning is what does that diversification look like? How do I have my assets diversified? And do I have a written retirement income plan? If it's not written, then it's not a plan. And you got to have it written down so you have something to follow to see, am I on track for where I need to be? And that, to me, that's a big deal, Danielle.
It is a big deal. And speaking of a big deal, I know we've talked about this multiple times on the show, Phillip, about healthcare. And so what's interesting about healthcare is that the costs are projected to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars in retirement. I know we've heard this many times, but Fidelity estimates that a 65-year-old couple can expect to spend $315,000, that's after tax, throughout retirement, but that's not including long-term care. And I wonder if retirees are prepared for this. So this is why you're here, but how can we prepare them for an expense like this?
So anybody that's listened to my show at any time period at all knows that I'm not a fan of this statistic, right? Because it's a valid point, okay? Fidelity is looking at a couple living, I think, 30 years. And so if you take that math down a little bit, that basically says that you're going to spend, as a couple, $10,500 a year in healthcare. Danielle, I just ran some simple numbers. And if you look at the cost of Medicare, Part B, and then you add in there, the prescription drug coverage for Part D, and then you add in your Medicare supplement, you're almost at $10,500 for a couple right there. So I think they put that big number out there to get people's attention, and it does get people's attention. But again, healthcare costs are like no other, or just like any other cost out there. You have to budget for it. And it all comes down back to that problem of income planning. Having that written retirement income plan and using a realistic budget. And these are the numbers that have to be in that budget is your healthcare cost. If you leave that out, you're opening yourself up for failure when it comes to income planning. And we don't want anybody to fail when it comes to income.
There's no cost or obligation to speak with Phillip and his team, so don't hesitate to call that number, 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188. You do not have to plan for retirement alone, so you don't have to do that. Phillip, as we continue talking about this topic on the things that you need on your retirement planning list, I want to kind of pivot here on the amount of times that many of us tend to overlook taxes as we're planning for retirement. I think sometimes we're going to wake up one day and be like, it's a dream. You don't have to, we can avoid it someday. How often do people overlook taxes, especially as they're planning for retirement?
Yes, it's funny, Danielle, because probably at least once a year, I'll get a call from somebody that says, hey, Phillip, I'm retiring. So this will be the last year I have to file a tax return. That could be the farthest thing from the truth. Now it could be that, yes, you are fortunate enough that all you get Social Security, and so maybe you won't have to file a tax return. But that's not, at least that's not the majority of folks I see who have IRAs and have investment accounts. Those folks are pretty much always going to have to file a return and pay taxes. And I think that's what folks forget is that, hey, when you pull money out of your IRA, it's a taxable event.
Right.
And it affects a lot of things. One, obviously, you got to pay tax on that money you pull out. It can affect how much your Social Security is taxable. And so we look at part of our core retirement design is we look at how can we minimize that? Maybe not today, but how can we minimize that over the lifetime that you're going to be here? We want to look at taxes not today, tomorrow, next week, but we want to look at them 25 years from now. Overall, are you paying less in tax than if you did no planning at all? And a lot of that comes down to looking at Roth conversions, looking at some other avenues that we can use to maybe pay some tax today at a lower rate than what we may have to pay down the road. Again, it takes some planning. It takes some tools to come to those planning processes. But I see too many people that they file a return, they're in a 0% tax bracket, and they're excited. However, eventually they're going to start taking more money out of their IRA, which may bump them up into a higher tax bracket. I hate it when I see people wasting a 0% tax bracket. You could be taking money out of your IRA, maybe paying 0% tax on it, maybe paying 10% tax on it. It depends on, putting together that plan. And that's, I love to do that to help people minimize their taxes over their lifetime. It can be painful sometimes in the first couple of years if you're having to pay tax and you're not used to it. But if I can pay 10% now, I'd rather do that than have to pay 20, 30% later.
That's right. And as we're speaking on taxes, Phillip, if you can just explain also the difference between tax preparation and having a tax efficient strategy for your retirement income plan, because they're two completely different things.
Two completely different things. You're absolutely correct. So tax preparation is simply a historic event, right? It's taking whatever happened last year and recording it on the tax return and sending it to Uncle Sam and paying or getting a refund, one of the two. And so that's the deal. There's no planning in that. That's just preparing your return. Having a tax efficient strategy is sitting down and being proactive with your planning process. That means looking at what tax rates are this year. What are they next year? What are they going to be in 2026? Does it make sense to take extra money out of tax deferred accounts like IRAs, maybe some annuities, in order to pay some tax today at a lower rate than what I might have to pay later? And it's actually putting together a plan. And so that's one of the things that we do in our core retirement design is we put together a tax plan. How can we reduce our overall taxes? And if we can, eventually get folks in a 0% tax bracket. Obviously, we got to pay some tax somewhere, so we pay it up front at a lower rate so that we don't have to pay anything. Doesn't work for everybody. Everybody's different. So before you start messing around with Roth conversions and tax strategies, make sure you sit down with somebody that's qualified tax professional that can walk you through the process and let you know exactly what the tax impacts are going to be. Example, I met with some clients the other day or prospects the other day. They got blindsided last year because they had this huge, huge tax bill that they weren't expecting. They expected some, but not what they got. Somebody tried to take basically 25% of their IRA and convert to a Roth all at one time. It was painful. Not only that, their Medicare premiums are going to skyrocket this next year in 2025 to the highest they can be. And so that's the other thing you have to be cognizant of is that when you start taking extra money out, your Medicare premium is an income-based premium. If your income goes up too high, your premium is going to go up in the year after you file your tax return. People don't realize that. That's all part of our planning process, Danielle, our core retirement design and income planning process. Folks, give us a call, 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188 to get started on your core retirement analysis.
If you have any questions about retirement, do not hesitate to call Phillip and his team at Statler Financial Services. They are here to guide you through a successful retirement. Again, that number is 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188. You're listening to the Statler Financial Radio Show. We'll be right back.
Do you have a retirement plan but would like a second opinion? Call Phillip Statler today, 863-285-3815. Statler Financial Services, 863-285-3815.
Surprise parties can be fun.
Surprise!
Financial surprises, not so much, especially when you're retired, like finding out you owe more in taxes than you thought you would, or having to go back to work to make ends meet. Maybe you'll be okay, but why not double check just to be sure? Call Phillip Statler at Statler Financial Services and schedule a no-cost retirement double check at 863-877-1188. Phillip and his team have seen their fair share of surprises over the years and know how to help you avoid them. Call 863-877-1188 to schedule your no-cost retirement double check with Phillip Statler at Statler Financial Services. Don't let a financial surprise derail your retirement dreams. Call 863-877-1188 now. That's 863-877-1188. You can also visit StatlerFinancial.com for more info. Advisory services are offered through Second Half Financial Partners, LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor.
Welcome back into the Statler Financial Radio Show. I'm your host, Danielle J. Martin. Retirement is one of life's biggest milestones, but there are a lot of myths out there that can lead to costly mistakes. So today, joining with me is Phillip Statler. He is the president and founder of Statler Financial Services, and he's going to bust some of the most common myths about retirement and help you plan a little savvy. So, Phillip, are you ready to get started here?
Sounds good, Danielle. Let's see, where can we be and what should we look at first? Let's look at the first myth, and that is you'll spend much less in retirement. Now, folks, that sounds good. It sounds easy, and it's easy to assume that your expenses will drop. But, folks, many retirees actually maintain or even increase their spending, especially in those first few years of retirement. When they travel more, they pursue new hobbies, it's important to plan for the lifestyle you want. So I tell clients, look, don't think you're going to spend less. Let's plan on just spending the same net income, which is a little bit different than gross income, right? Because your net paycheck was less taxes, less Social Security, less 401k, less. So, but if we look at their net paychecks, then that's a good indication of what they will most likely continue to spend even after they retire, Danielle.
Wow, that's really eye-opener there. So let's go to our next myth. What's another myth that people believe?
So another big one is that Medicare will cover all healthcare costs. Now, while Medicare is a great resource, it doesn't cover everything. Things like dental, vision, long-term care are typically out of pocket unless you have a separate plan. So planning for healthcare expenses is key. A couple other things. Now, granted, you see these ads on TV all the time, right? That, this Medicare Advantage plan covers dental or vision or this or that. And that's true. But those don't realize it. But when you do a Medicare Advantage plan, a lot of times you're opting out of Medicare as we know it, and you're going with a separate plan, and then you're paying deductibles or you're paying some other expenses in there that you may not realize. And so a lot of times, by the time you take what you're paying in your Medicare premium, then you end up paying substantially more. And if you don't have a good supplement, then you're paying that 20% that Medicare doesn't pay. So you'll want to make sure that you've got the right plan in place. And some of them aren't cheap. And so we need to make sure that we plan for that and we budgeted for that.
That's right. I know a lot of people have questions about this. So thank you for clearing up the myths. This is why having that financial advisor by your side near you is very important. This is definitely something to think about. Okay, let's move on to the next myth. I believe this is about Social Security.
It is, because a common myth is assuming Social Security alone is going to be enough. Now, Social Security is only designed to replace a portion of your income, not cover everything. Folks, it's a good baseline. It is great to have it, but having other sources of income is crucial. Remember, we've always talked about how the three-legged stool doesn't really exist anymore, and we have to create our own third leg anymore. But the legs of that, if you remember, Social Security was the one leg, and that leg was going to cover anywhere from 25 to maybe 40% of your income that you're going to need. The other leg was a pension, which we don't have pensions much anymore, at least in the private sector. So you're going to have to create your own pension. to make sure that you've got income. And then the last leg is obviously your own savings that you've saved. And so to create that three-legged stool, it takes a little bit more work now, and it takes a little bit more understanding of what your needs are going to be in retirement. And so it is crucial that you have an income plan in place, knowing what your Social Security is going to be, what is your shortfall, and how are we going to make up for it, Danielle?
That's right. This makes a lot of sense. So thank you for clearing this up. And as we're going through these myths, if you have questions about something you want to get a little bit more clarity on, don't hesitate to reach out to Phillip and the team at Statler Financial Services. In case you missed that number earlier, 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188. Okay, Phillip, let's keep going. What are some other assumptions that we should avoid?
So some people think that they don't need to save as much if they plan to keep working during retirement. But while working longer is a great idea, it's not something you can always count on. Health issues can arise. Job availability. There may not be jobs out there for you. So those things can change your plans drastically. So you might want to consider to consider saving just what you plan on saving originally. Treat any extra work as an income bonus, allowing you to leave more money invested for down the road. Don't count on it. I know there's folks out there that they need a part-time job just to do something to stay out of their spouse's hair. But don't count on it. We want to make sure that any income we do earn, just consider that a bonus. Let's plan for retirement as if we won't have any part-time employment.
That's a clever safety net. So are there any other myths that we should also cover?
So I think this is a good one. Some people think that all debt should be paid off before retirement. While lowering debt is good, and not all debt is the same. For example, a low-interest mortgage might not need to be, you might not want to rush to pay that off. It's about balancing your cash flow and what works best for you. The biggest thing I see is that folks need to have everything else paid down or paid off. You don't want a huge credit card bill sitting out there or multiple credit card bills, which I've seen disasters. Folks sitting out there heading into retirement with, 3, 4, 5 credit cards maxed out, tried to head into retirement. Folks, that is a cash flow detriment. We don't want that to happen to folks. We want to make sure that we come in as debt-free as possible. Yeah, maybe you have a mortgage because it's a low interest rate. Maybe you've got a small car loan that's going to be paid off in a couple of years. But outside of that, that's really where we kind of want to limit that. We don't want much debt heading into retirement because it eats into our cash flow.
These are some good things to keep in mind. Very helpful advice. Okay, Phillip, we have time for one more final myth on your list. And what is that?
So the last one is the belief that legacy planning can wait. Planning for how your wealth will transfer to the next generation is something that should be addressed sooner rather than later. It helps avoid unnecessary stress and helps ensure your wishes are carried out. So many times I sit down with folks and they want to put this part off, how they do things and legacy planning. If we want to leave something to the kids or to the grandkids, we need to decide what that is, how much that's going to be, and then how we're going to fund that. Does that mean we need to have life insurance to provide for that legacy planning? Do we need to do more Roth conversions so that our kids and grandkids don't have to pay tax on the benefits that they're going to receive at our death? And let me throw this in here too, because it's a big deal, is are we planning for not just our kids and our grandkids, but our spouse? And that to me is where Roth conversions can really play a big part. Because when one spouse passes away, Danielle, the other spouse is going to end up typically in a higher tax bracket. They're going to have to pay more taxes. And so by doing Roth conversions, eliminating the tax on their IRA required minimum distributions, we can help that remaining spouse better themselves from a both cash flow and a tax perspective. So that is very important, that we decide how we want to plan for our legacy and what does that look like for our spouse, our kids, and our grandkids, Danielle. It's a big deal. People don't think about it, but they really should.
Phillip, any final words of advice as we close out the show here today?
I would say that my advice is to stay proactive and informed. Folks, retirement is a major step, and it's one that doesn't allow do-overs. So we want to get it right the first time. And the more you prepare, the more you can enjoy it. And remember, we're here to help you plan and make informed choices. Again, that's why I created the Core Retirement Design, to help folks design their ideal retirement. What does it look like for you? What do you want those years to be? Where do you want to go? What's your bucket list look like? How can we help you accomplish those things? That's what the Core Retirement Design does. It measures risk. It makes sure that your risk lines up with where it needs to be. It looks at taxes and works on a way to reduce them as much as possible for you and your family. And lastly, it creates an income plan, giving you peace of mind, knowing that your income is going to last as long as you need it to. That's our Core Retirement Design. Give us a call at 863-877-1188 to schedule your core retirement analysis. Folks, all that is you and me on the phone for 30 minutes, finding out where you are, answering your questions, and making sure that you're on the right path. If you're not, hey, we're going to point things out to you. Hey, maybe you need to fix this. Consider this. And if we can help in any way, we want to be there as a resource to help you have the retirement you always dreamed of. Again, give us a call at 863-877-1188. I'd love to spend 30 minutes with you to make sure you're on the right path to the retirement you always dreamed of. That number one more time, 863-877-1188.
It's always a great pleasure to be here with you, Phillip, talking about all things retirement. Again, in case you missed that number, 863-877-1188. You're listening to the Statler Financial Radio Show. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time.
Needing a second opinion on your retirement plan or to see if you're paying more than your fair share to Uncle Sam? Schedule your complimentary visit today. Text VISIT to 863-877-1188. That's VISIT to 863-877-1188.
Advisory services offered through Second Half Financial Partners, LLC, a SEC-registered investment advisor. The opinions voiced and information provided in this material are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine what investments are appropriate for you, please consult with a financial advisor. Second Half Financial Partners, LLC does not provide tax or legal advice. Please consult your tax or legal advisor regarding your particular situation. This radio show is a paid placement.
Who likes uncertainty? Wall Street certainly doesn't. With fears of a potential recession and partisan politics, there's a lot of uncertainty right now. What will your future look like? Will your taxes go up? Will your savings go down? Here in the Sebring area, financial advisor Phillip Statler and the team at Statler Financial Services have seen uncertainty come and go. Phillip can help you create a plan designed to preserve your finances in uncertain times. And it's not a matter of if those uncertain times will show up, but when. Call 863-877-1188 now to meet with Phillip Statler and the team at Statler Financial Services. Call 863-877-1188 and schedule your visit today. 863-877-1188. Advisory services offered through Second Half Financial Partners, LLC, a SEC-registered investment advisor. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.